Agatha Raisin and the Improper Iced Cake. In a polished village hall where pride, icing, and ambition collide, Agatha Raisin's public humiliation turns deadly when a rival baker collapses beside her own masterpiece. As gossip curdles into murder and every smile hides a motive, Agatha must uncover the truth. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? And subscribe so you never miss upcoming mysteries. Doris, if you hover over that table any longer, I'll assume you're intending to marry it, Agatha snapped, marching across the WI hall with the purposeful stride of a woman who refused to let reality interfere with her grandeur. Doris Simpson jumped, nearly upending a bowl of pastel icing. I was only checking the shine on it, Mrs. Raisin, she said, cheeks pink. It shines enough to blind a pilot, Agatha declared, whisking past her. We're here to inspire respect, not to signal aircraft. The WI hall had been scrubbed within an inch of its life. Every surface gleamed, every chair stood obediently in rows, and a faint smell of lemon polish clung to the air like a needy admirer. Agatha had insisted on the modern iced cake masterclass, despite the fact that she despised baking, icing, and any activity requiring precise measurements. What she loved was winning, or, failing that, being admired. Today, she intended to secure both. On the center table stood her triumph, a towering, elaborately iced confection she fully intended the WI to believe she had made with her own hands. In truth, she had purchased it from a discreet patisserie in Evesham, sworn the owner to secrecy, and spent the morning rehearsing lines about modern piping techniques. She was halfway through practicing a smug smile when the door swung open and Petra Danby swept in. Petra was everything Agatha hated on sight. Sleek hair, perfect posture, and the kind of London confidence that treated village women as quaint curiosities. Her tailored coat shimmered faintly, suggesting it cost more than Agatha's monthly mortgage payment. "Darlings," Petra trilled, spreading her arms as if embracing an adoring theatre audience. "What a charming hall! So very traditional." Agatha bristled. "We like it that way. There's no need for everything to look like a television studio." "Oh, but television loves me," Petra said, smiling sweetly. She drifted to Agatha's cake, tilting her head. "And what have we here?" Agatha cleared her throat. "My showpiece. Made it myself. Took hours." Petra leaned in, inhaled delicately, then tapped one manicured nail on a sugared rose. "An impressive attempt, though I must say the patisserie in Evesham does this particular scrollwork. Quite distinctive." Silence fell like a dropped sheet. Agatha's stomach plunged. Excuse me?" "Oh, yes," Petra continued, her tone syrupy. "Brandolini's. Lovely people. Very talented. I recognized this at once." A ripple of delighted horror spread across the hall. WI ladies leaned closer, breathing in the sharp scent of humiliation. Doris looked panicked. Mrs. Bloxby winced in quiet sympathy. Agatha could feel her cheeks ignite. That woman at Brandolini's must have copied me." Petra smiled the kind of smile that could curdle milk. "Of course, dear. A very generous interpretation." Laughter, soft, pitying, and painfully smug, threaded around the room. Agatha's pride shriveled. She could almost hear the gossip forming. Agatha Raisin cheats again. Petra moved to the demonstration table, producing her own immaculate cake. She held a piping bag like a violin bow, her hands steady, elegant, annoyingly competent. "Let's begin with a simple border," Petra said, "and perhaps a message reflecting the spirit of honest home baking." The room watched, entranced, as she piped neat, looping letters. Agatha folded her arms, muttering darkly under her breath. When Petra stepped aside, the message was clear. Shortcuts are sweet, but cheats are sour. The hall erupted. Some gasped, others snickered behind their hands. Even the vicar's wife looked scandalized, yet faintly amused. Agatha stared at the message, her humiliation complete. "That," she said tightly, "is in very poor taste." Petra fluttered her lashes. "But accurate, darling." Agatha considered launching herself bodily at the cake, the table, or Petra. Only Mrs. Bloxby's gentle hand on her arm stopped her. "Perhaps a breath of air," Mrs. Bloxby murmured. "What I need," Agatha hissed, "is an audience that appreciates brilliance when it sees it." By the time the masterclass ended, Agatha's dignity was in tatters. The WI ladies clustered in gleeful knots, dissecting the scandal. Doris apologised repeatedly, although she had done nothing at all. Roy Silver, who had arrived late and missed the spectacle, texted on his ancient mobile to ask if anything fabulous had happened. Agatha ignored him. She marched home in a fury, heels clicking dangerously on the pavement. Hodge greeted her with a yawn, then resumed washing his paw, entirely indifferent to her emotional ruin. "Typical male," Agatha muttered, tossing her coat aside. She poured herself a stiff gin, swirled it, then caught herself. She must avoid falling into the habit of pouring every time something annoyed her, which inconveniently meant almost hourly. "Oh, shut up," she said to the bottle, and took a fortifying sip. The phone rang. She snatched it up, still prickling. Agatha Raisin speaking, badly treated, unjustly humiliated, and in no mood for nonsense. "Good evening to you as well," came Doris's voice. "I only wanted to say, well, I heard Petra is organising a big Cotswold cake fair in Evesham next month. The WI will be expected to enter." Agatha paused mid-sip. "A cake fair?" "Yes, with judging and prizes." Doris hesitated. "Petra herself will be overseeing it. She's very excited." Agatha's fingers tightened around the glass until it squeaked. "Is she now?" "She said it will be the biggest event of the season. I thought you ought to know." "Oh, I know," Agatha said, voice dangerously calm. "Tell the WI I will be entering, and I will win." "Oh," Doris squeaked. "How lovely." Agatha hung up without ceremony. She paced the living room like a general plotting a counterattack. Petra had humiliated her publicly. Now Agatha would repay the favour by beating her at her own game. She imagined the scene already. Petra forced to applaud, the WI ladies astonished, Agatha radiant with well-earned victory. "Let her try to sneer then," Agatha muttered. "I'll show her what a proper showstopper looks like." Hodge leapt onto the sofa, blinking lazily at her. "You don't think I can win, do you?" Hodge licked his shoulder and settled into a loaf. "I'll take that as encouragement," Agatha said grimly. As she refilled her glass, only slightly, a faint thread of doubt crept in. Winning would require baking. Baking would require patience, precision, clean aprons, measuring spoons. She shuddered. Still, what was personal growth if not agony with icing sugar? She found an old recipe book, blew the dust off it, then shoved it away again. She would start tomorrow, or possibly the next day. Inspiration was a delicate thing. A sudden thought struck her. If Petra is in charge of judging, then she'll be there, right at the centre of everything. She smiled, imagining Petra's smug face when Agatha unveiled a cake even she couldn't criticise. "Perfect," Agatha murmured. "Absolutely perfect." But beneath the bravado a small, sharp intuition flickered, because whenever Agatha Raisin made a grand plan, the universe usually delivered trouble instead of triumph. She glanced at Hodge, who stretched luxuriously, unconcerned by the social wars of the WI. "Well," she said, lowering herself into an armchair, "if murder is ever committed with icing, I suppose I'll be dragged into it." Hodge blinked at her, unimpressed. The kettle clicked off in the kitchen, letting out a soft sigh, a domestic punctuation mark to a day of rising drama. Agatha closed her eyes, vowing that next month she would not only redeem herself, she would become the talk of the Cotswolds for all the right reasons. At least that was the plan, but plans in Carsley had a habit of curdling. The next morning, Agatha discovered that enthusiasm did not come with measuring spoons. Agatha glared at the open cookbook as though it were personally responsible for her humiliation. "What sort of lunatic measures things in grams?" she muttered, flicking flour off the page. Hodge sat on the table, surveying the mess with the aloof judgment of a judge at Crufts. He gave a single disdainful blink. "Don't look at me like that," Agatha snapped. "If Petra Danby thinks she's the only woman who can pipe icing without causing international incident, she's wrong." The flour-coated bowl on the counter wobbled dangerously. Hodge swished his tail. Agatha slammed the cookbook shut. "Hopeless," she muttered. "Absolutely hopeless." A knock rattled the front door. "Probably Doris, coming to apologise for being useless," Agatha said loudly, stomping across the hall. She yanked the door open. Roy Silver swept in, arms wide, scarf flying behind him like a theatrical banner. "Darling, I came at once." Agatha stepped aside. "You make it sound like someone died." "Your reputation did," Roy cried, dropping onto the sofa. I heard the WI hall nearly exploded from the shock of Agatha Raisin being unmasked. She narrowed her eyes. "Tea?" Yes, please. Something soothing. My nerves are shredded from the train. Agatha shoved the biscuit tin at him. Shop bought. Don't start. Roy crunched into one, then surveyed the floury chaos. Oh dear. You've been attempting... what, exactly? Research, Agatha said stiffly. For the cake fair. Roy placed a dramatic hand to his chest. You're entering? After yesterday? Obviously, Agatha snapped. I will win. Roy smiled. Then you'll need information. He leaned forward. Petra is not universally adored in London. That doesn't surprise me, Agatha muttered. There were whispers, Roy continued, warming to his subject. Stolen recipes, unpaid suppliers, a partner she dumped spectacularly, and some scandal involving a television slot that mysteriously vanished. A thief, Agatha said, pleased. Excellent. Roy nodded. If you want to beat her, you need to know your enemy. Agatha straightened. Then tell me everything. For 10 blissful minutes, Roy delivered gossip with the fervour of a man reading scripture. He described Petra's meteoric rise, her suspiciously similar signature creations, her habit of leaving people exhausted and poorer. According to him, half of Evesham's catering scene disliked her, and the other half feared her. Agatha's pride twitched. If Petra had made enemies across counties, perhaps Agatha's humiliation had simply joined a long queue. Roy finished his tea, inspected the kitchen again, and sighed. Darling, if you insist on baking, please don't poison yourself before the competition. I'll poison anyone I want, thank you. Agatha paused. In theory, Roy grinned. Call me if you need a glamorous assistant. He left in a gust of cologne and drama. Agatha looked at the flour, the cookbook, and Hodge's judgmental stare. Fine, she said. We're going to the pub. The Red Lion was full, warm, and buzzing with the sort of gossip that travelled faster than electricity. Agatha slipped into the bar, chin raised, daring anyone to comment on her public embarrassment. They commented anyway. Doris scurried over first, face blotchy with remorse. Mrs. Raisin, I feel dreadful. If only I'd stopped Petra before she... Doris, Agatha said, your only fault is being too timid. Now stop wringing your hands or I'll staple them to your sides. Doris attempted a laugh which came out as a squeak. She was helping me with my baking, you know. Petra. Only... She fidgeted. She wasn't very kind about it. Agatha softened. Timid Doris was an easy target for a woman like Petra. Did she criticize everything? Oh, yes, Doris said earnestly. She said my sponge was rural. I didn't know sponge could be rural. Agatha patted her arm. She's rude, that's all. Ignore her. A thinner, quieter voice added. She wasn't very polite to me either. Belinda Tapp hovered beside Doris, small and pale, clutching her handbag as if it might escape. Belinda baked beautifully but spoke rarely. What did she say to you? Agatha asked. Belinda hesitated. She asked about my mother's recipe book. Agatha frowned. Why? She said it had potential, but she kept insisting on seeing it again. I didn't want to give it to her. Mum wrote everything in it in pencil, and Petra looked at the pages like they were hers already. Agatha felt a prickle of interest. Did Petra ever borrow it? Belinda's cheeks flushed. Only once. She returned it the next day, but some pages had been folded, and she'd left a mark on one of the lemon icing recipes. Roy's gossip echoed in Agatha's mind. Stolen recipes. Before she could press further, the crowd shifted and revealed Petra herself, standing by the bar, sipping wine and speaking to Guy Latimer, the landlord. Petra leaned in close, laughing lightly. Guy, usually cheerful, looked oddly tense. Agatha watched them. Why is she talking to Guy? Oh, Doris whispered. She's been offering him some catering partnership. Something about modernizing his menu. Agatha snorted. Guy's idea of modernizing is serving chips in a bowl instead of a plate. Guy's shoulders stiffened. He glanced towards the women as though aware of being discussed. Belinda tugged at her sleeve. There's something else, she murmured. Someone brought this earlier. She lifted a small cake box from a nearby table. Inside was a miniature iced cake, one of Petra's demonstration samples. Across the top, in flawless piping, ran another sly message. Old recipes hide old mistakes. Agatha let out a low whistle. Well, well, Belinda looked stricken. Do you think she meant... Yes, Agatha said. Absolutely. Doris looked from Belinda to the cake, horrified. "But that's dreadful. I thought she was only teasing." "She was aiming," Agatha said dryly. "The barbs are just delivered in icing instead of bullets." The atmosphere in the pub shifted. Admiration for Petra's skill began to sour, replaced with irritation. Even the vicar's wife looked tight-lipped. A few women muttered that Petra had gone too far. Agatha placed the cake carefully back into the box. "You see? She enjoys insulting people. It's performance art." "And she's very good at it," Doris whispered sadly. Across the room, Petra raised her glass in a smug little toast to Guy, who looked like a man swallowing a hedgehog. Agatha crossed her arms. She'll get her comeuppance. People like Petra always do. As if on cue, Petra tapped her spoon against her glass. "Ladies, a quick announcement." The pub quieted. "I am thrilled to tell you that the Cotswold Cake Fair will take place in Evesham next month, and I will personally oversee the grand tasting ceremony." Groans rippled through the WI members. Belinda swallowed hard. Doris made a noise like a distressed kettle. Petra continued, glowing with self-satisfaction. "I expect wonderful entries from all of you, especially Mrs. Raisin." All eyes swiveled to Agatha. Agatha smiled with teeth. "You'll get your surprise, Petra." "Splendid." Petra raised her glass again. "May the best baker win." She swept out of the pub, leaving a faint trail of expensive perfume and resentment. When the door closed behind her, the pub exhaled collectively. Agatha leaned back in her chair. "Where there's that much sugar," she said, "there's bound to be blood." Belinda blinked. "Blood?" "Metaphorically," Agatha said, though she wasn't entirely convinced. Doris shivered. "Oh, Mrs. Raisin, I do hope the fair goes smoothly." Agatha snorted. "Smoothly? With Petra judging? My dear, nothing involving that woman has ever gone smoothly." She reached for her bag, ready to escape the rising hum of rumours. "Come along," she said to herself. "I've got a cake to learn." Back home, Hodge sat on the kitchen counter like a tiny, furry magistrate. He offered no comfort, which somehow helped. Agatha tossed her coat aside and sighed. This village is going to be unbearable until that fair is over. Hodge stretched elegantly and blinked. The kettle clicked on with a weary sigh, matching Agatha's mood exactly. 3 weeks later, the next month arrived far too quickly. "Stop shaking the table, Doris. You'll give my cake a nervous breakdown," Agatha snapped, hauling her elaborate showpiece into the Evesham Cake Fair marquee. The tent buzzed with chatter, clattering tins, and the faint hum of competitive malice. Bunting fluttered overhead in cheerful colours that did nothing to soothe Agatha's frayed nerves. Doris flinched. "I was only trying to make room." "Make room somewhere else," Agatha grumbled, manoeuvring her cake into what she hoped was the most flattering light. "Honestly, this whole event is a battlefield disguised as a bakery." The marquee was packed. Stalls overflowed with towers of sponge, delicate pastries, glossy icings, and bakers intent on proving their genius. A chilly breeze slipped under the tent walls, but inside was a warm fug of buttercream, perfume, and concealed grudges. Agatha surveyed the WI table with the critical eye of a general before war. Belinda Tapp's delicate, old-fashioned cake sat neatly centred, decorated with restrained Victorian charm. Doris's sponge tilted to one side like a weary hat, but was obviously made with affection. And then there was Agatha's creation, towering, glittering, and iced within an inch of its life. It looked less like a cake and more like a monument to overconfidence. "Perfect," Agatha declared, adjusting a sugar rose. "Every judge will see it immediately." "Every judge will hear you shouting about it immediately," Roy Silver chimed from behind her, arriving with the swagger of someone who believed he improved any room. His bright scarf fluttered like a victory flag. "Darling, the colours are bold." "They're regal," Agatha retorted, "and unlike Petra, I didn't need a small army to make them." Roy smirked. "You needed Doris. Same thing." Before Agatha could retaliate, a clipped voice cut through the noise. "Mind the spacing, please. There are regulations." Trevor Jessup, the environmental health officer, strode over with a clipboard clutched like a weapon. A small man with large grievances, he inspected the cakes with theatrical disgust. "Who arranged this table?" Trevor demanded. "The items are too close. And whose cake is this?" He pointed at Agatha's masterpiece as if it were leaking nuclear waste. "Mine," Agatha said, lifting her chin. Trevor sniffed. "Suspiciously neat edges, almost commercial." Agatha bristled. "Are you implying—" "I'm merely observing," Trevor said, scribbling on his clipboard. "You'd be amazed how many people attempt shortcuts. Hygiene suffers." Agatha glared at him. Roy leaned close. "He hates Petra's business, you know. Said her kitchen once failed an inspection. Private vendetta." "A useful rumour," Agatha murmured. Petra Danby chose that moment to sweep into the tent like a minor royal. She wore a tailored coat, immaculate hair, and a smile sharpened to a blade. Her own towering cake creation was carried behind her by 2 assistants who staggered under the weight. Agatha clenched her jaw. "Show off." Petra noticed her and glided over. "Agatha, how wonderful to see you exhibiting again. Do try to enjoy yourself today." "I intend to," Agatha said flatly. Petra's gaze slid to the WI table. "Such variety. Doris, dear, charming attempt. Belinda, still sticking to your mother's designs, I see." Belinda flushed. Well, yes." "Sweet," Petra said, smiling in a way that suggested it was anything but. Then she stopped before Agatha's cake. My, her eyebrows lifted. "Ambitious." "Flawless," Agatha corrected. Petra's eyes gleamed. "We shall see." The judging began. Petra took command, trailing along the tables with exaggerated grace. Each cake was examined, sniffed, prodded, and sampled with the air of a monarch slumming among peasants. Her comments were barbed arrows. "This border is sloppy." "This sponge lacks confidence." "Such a pity about the flavour." When she reached Doris, she tilted her head. "Simple, rural, honest." She paused. "Very honest." Doris wilted like overcooked lettuce. Petra moved on, pausing longer at Belinda's cake. She ran a finger along the delicate piping. "This design is familiar," she murmured. "Very familiar. Almost like an old project of mine." Belinda's fingers tightened around her handbag. Roy, hovering nearby, raised an eyebrow. "Now that," he whispered to Agatha, "is interesting." Agatha nodded, mind ticking. Petra's reaction was too pointed, too knowing. Finally, Petra reached the centre stage for the grand unveiling of her own showpiece. The crowd leaned forward. Trevor Jessup scowled as if anticipating a hygiene violation. With dramatic flair, Petra removed the cover. Gasps rippled across the tent. The cake was magnificent, tall, glossy, perfectly symmetrical, but it was the message piped across the front that sent whispers flying. "Sweetness hides everything, even your little secrets." The vicar's wife clutched her pearls. Guy Latimer, standing at the far side of the tent, went pale under his tan. Agatha stared at the message. "Good grief," she muttered. "She's escalating." Roy grinned. Deliciously wicked. Petra basked in the shock. "A bit of playful commentary," she said. "Cakes should entertain as well as nourish." She sliced herself a generous piece, raised it like a trophy, and addressed the crowd. "Taste is everything. It tells the whole truth." Agatha folded her arms. Someone should gag her. Petra took a bite. Half a second later she coughed. A sharper cough followed, then another. Her face tightened. The crowd tittered, assuming theatrics. Then Petra staggered. The fork fell from her hand. She swayed, arms twitching as if struggling for balance. The tent went silent in horrified unison. "Is she—" Doris whispered. Petra gave a choking gasp, clutched at the table and crumpled to the ground. The slice of cake tumbled from her hand, smearing the icing like a fallen accusation. Screams erupted. A woman fainted. Trevor Jessup shouted for space, blowing a whistle no one realized he carried. Belinda stepped backward in shock, bumping into Roy, who steadied her automatically. Agatha stood frozen, staring down at Petra Danby sprawled on the marquee floor. Her first feeling, shamefully, was a small jolt of horrified satisfaction, swiftly drowned by genuine panic. "Oh, Lord," Agatha breathed. "She can't be." People surged around, shouting for ambulances and first aid. Petra didn't move. Guy Latimer shoved through the crowd, looking stricken. "What happened?" "Ask her cake," someone muttered. Agatha tore her gaze from the fallen woman and stared at the ruined slice on the ground, its icing smeared into unreadable shapes. "She was fine a moment ago," she whispered. Roy's voice was low. "This is no fainting spell, darling." As the tent dissolved into chaos, Agatha stepped backward, heart thudding. She glanced at the message on Petra's cake, then at the faces around her. the shocked, the frightened, and those who looked just a bit too calculating. Doris whimpered, Belinda trembled, Trevor barked orders, and Agatha Raisin realized, with the sinking inevitability of experience, that she was once again standing at the center of a mystery she hadn't asked for, but would absolutely solve. A distant part of her already wondered who had wanted Petra silenced. A louder part wondered whether the police would believe she wasn't involved. As the ambulance siren wailed in the distance, Agatha pressed a hand to her chest. "I only came here to win a cake competition," she muttered. But in Carsley, even cake came with consequences. "Don't you dare look at me like that," Agatha snapped at the paramedic, who hadn't actually looked at her at all. The fairground was in chaos, children crying, WI members fluttering like startled hens, and the marquee door flapping as if trying to escape the scandal. Petra Danby lay motionless beneath a foil blanket, her expensive shoes sticking out at odd angles. The ambulance lights flashed, harsh and unforgiving, painting the buttercream-splattered tent in alternating panic. Bill Wong pushed through the cluster of onlookers, his expression a mixture of resignation and dread. "Agatha," he said, sounding exactly like a man discovering a leak in his roof. Agatha bristled. "Before you start, I didn't kill her." "I didn't say you did." "Your eyes said it," Agatha retorted. Bill sighed and crouched beside Petra's body. After a quiet exchange with the paramedics, he straightened. "She's gone. It looks like poisoning." "From the cake?" a woman gasped. "Well, she didn't trip over her own ego," someone muttered from behind a pillar of muffins. Bill turned to Agatha. "I'm afraid I'll need you to come in." Agatha drew herself up. "You cannot honestly believe I poisoned her. Millions of people bake badly every day without murdering anyone." "Agatha," Bill said wearily, "you were next to her cake stand. You argued with her yesterday, and 3 witnesses claim they saw you, adjusting something near her table." Agatha sputtered. "Adjusting? I was adjusting my dignity, not her icing." Even Roy Silver, who had materialized beside her in a scented cloud, winced. "Darling, perhaps tone down the indignation until we're out of the public eye." Agatha glared. "I am not being led away like a villain in some cheap melodrama." "Good," Bill said, "because you'll be coming in my car." Agatha marched toward the police vehicle, chin high, muttering, "This is what happens when you try to better yourself. You attend one cake fair and suddenly you're Mata Hari with a piping nozzle." The Mercester police station was cold, echoing, and smelled faintly of instant coffee and floor cleaner. Agatha disliked it immediately. She perched on the interview chair like a queen forced to sit on a milking stool. Bill entered with a folder. "Let's go over your movements." "Briefly," Agatha said. "I have a village to clear my name in." He pinched the bridge of his nose. "Did you go near Petra's cake?" "I went near it," Agatha admitted. "I did not commit any crimes against it." Bill opened the folder. Witnesses in Carsley say many things, most of them wrong." "Agatha, I didn't poison her." "I know you didn't do it intentionally," Bill said gently. Agatha froze. "Intentionally?" "Oh, Lord," Bill closed the folder. "Look, my superior is itching to blame someone, and you were close, and you have a reputation." "A reputation?" Agatha sputtered. "For what? Having standards?" "For getting involved," Bill said, aggressively. Agatha huffed. "I should sue all of you for emotional damage." Bill stood. "You're not under arrest, just don't go anywhere." "I live in Carsley," Agatha snapped. "Where would I possibly go?" He gave her a look that suggested she was capable of going anywhere, including outer space, if she thought it would annoy her rivals. Back in Carsley, the WI Hall had transformed into a buzzing command center of rumor. Women huddled in anxious pockets, drinking weak tea and indulging in strong speculation. "She was always unstable," Mrs. Timpson declared loudly. "You could see it in her eyes, too much mascara." "She's not a murderer," Mrs. Bloxby said, calm and firm. "Thank you," Agatha said, sweeping into the hall. "At least someone here has functioning judgment." Half the room gasped. Doris Simpson rushed forward, pale and trembling. "Mrs. Raisin, I heard you were taken in." "I was invited in," Agatha corrected, "because apparently breathing near a dead woman makes you a suspect in this county." Mrs. Timpson sniffed. "People saw you hanging about Petra's cake." "People saw me breathing," Agatha replied. "Shall we arrest the wind next?" Trevor Jessup, who had stationed himself near the biscuits with the enthusiasm of a man who enjoyed delivering bad news, chimed in. I said all along her cakes failed hygiene standards. Probably poisoned herself. Interesting theory, Agatha said, eyeing him, almost eager. Trevor flushed. Just stating facts. You state them with alarming pleasure, she murmured. Belinda Tapp sat quietly at a side table, hands trembling around her mug of tea. Her handbag sat clutched tight in her lap, as if it might bolt. She looked as if a strong breeze might shatter her. Agatha softened her tone. Are you all right? Belinda shook her head. I didn't want her dead. I only wanted my book back. Agatha frowned. Your book? Belinda hesitated. She borrowed it again last week. Said she needed inspiration. I didn't want to argue. And now? Her eyes filled. Belinda had nothing to do with it, Doris said fiercely, surprising everyone. She's kind, Agatha nodded. She is. Guy Latimer entered then, still wearing his bar apron. He looked grim. This is going to ruin my business, he muttered. I had a contract draft with her. Well, nearly. Now it looks suspicious. Suspicious indeed, Agatha thought. Guy, why were you talking to Petra at the pub yesterday? Guy scratched his neck. She wanted exclusive catering rights for events. I couldn't afford it. She hinted she'd publicly criticize the pub if I refused. Strong-arming, you know. Roy Silver burst through the door with theatrical timing. Darlings, the press is circling the cake fair like buzzards over a trifle. Several WI ladies gasped. Agatha closed her eyes. Roy, do not. But it's marvellous, he exclaimed. Agatha Raisin and the icing incident. Think of the publicity. Agatha's glare could have melted fondant. Do you want me imprisoned? Not for long, Roy said brightly. Just long enough to get an exclusive interview. Mrs. Bloxby placed a gentle hand on Agatha's arm. You're frightened, she said quietly. Agatha pulled back. I most certainly am not. I am furious. Mrs. Bloxby smiled her soft, knowing smile. Anger is only fear wearing armour. Agatha sniffed, unwilling to admit anything. I will find out who killed Petra. Bill Wong appeared in the doorway, looking resigned. Agatha, don't. Don't what? She snapped. Don't investigate, Bill said. Please. Agatha tilted her chin. Bill, you know me. That's exactly why I'm saying it. I refuse to let my name rot because some sugar-coated tyrant dropped dead. Bill sighed. My superintendent already thinks you tampered with that cake. Agatha gasped. I did no such thing. I barely touched anything. That's the problem, Bill said. You barely touched anything in a very suspicious way. Roy leaned in. Darling, you do have a habit of hovering dramatically. Agatha swatted him away. I hover with purpose. Bill rubbed his temples. Listen, if you must snoop, at least be discreet. Discreet, Agatha echoed. I am the definition of discreet. Everyone in the hall made a noise of disbelief. Agatha glared at them. Fine. Finer than discreet. Invisible. Roy snorted. You? Invisible? Mrs. Bloxby smiled. Be careful, Agatha. Something in her tone made Agatha hesitate. It wasn't warning so much as compassion, which was harder to ignore. I'll solve this, Agatha muttered, before the police arrest me for walking past the wrong cupcake. Bill gave her a look that was half admiration, half dread. Just don't interfere too loudly. Agatha lifted her handbag. Interfering quietly has never been my strong suit. She swept from the hall with the air of a woman heading for battle, a woman whose pride stung, whose reputation wobbled, and whose temper simmered dangerously. She had been humiliated, suspected, and insulted. Someone would pay for that. At home, Hodge greeted her with an unimpressed flick of his tail and resumed washing his paw. Agatha dropped onto the sofa. Even you think I'm involved, she muttered. Hodge ignored her, curling into a loaf of perfect indifference. The kettle clicked on in the kitchen, exhaling a long, sympathetic sigh. Agatha stared into the room, fury warming her resolve. Fine, she whispered. If they think I did it, then I'll prove exactly who did. Hodge stretched, unimpressed but present, the one creature entirely unbothered by murder or scandal, and Agatha, watching him settle, felt her outrage sharpen into purpose. Charles, if you walk any slower, I'll suspect rigor mortis, Agatha snapped, striding ahead along Carsley Lane. She hadn't slept properly, her mind turning over jealousy, humiliation, and murder like a disgruntled tumble-dryer. She had summoned Charles Frayth at 8 o'clock sharp with the promise of gossip and lunch, which he accepted only after confirming she was paying for lunch. Charles adjusted his scarf with lazy elegance. "My dear Agatha, detectives must pace themselves. It's an art." "It's a job," she retorted, "and unlike you, I intend to do it." Charles smiled. "You sound almost fond of me when you're irritable." Agatha ignored him. Her breath puffed in small white clouds. The morning was crisp, clear, and annoyingly pretty. The sort of morning that should accompany picnics, not murder investigations. Their first stop was the Red Lion. Guy Latimer stood behind the bar, polishing glasses with the grim focus of a man who had lost control of his future. When he saw Agatha, his face tightened. "I'm not discussing it," Guy said. "I've already spoken to the police." "Police questions are dreary," Agatha said, sliding onto a bar stool. "Ours are more enlightening." Charles nodded. "And less official." Guy sighed. "Fine, but I didn't kill her." "Start with the contract," Agatha said, the one Petra was pushing. Guy poured himself a small lemonade. She wanted exclusivity, catering rights for events, parties, fairs. It sounded promising at first, but then she kept raising fees, and she said my pub kitchen was outdated. Charles raised a brow. "Is it?" "Of course," Guy snapped. "It's a pub, not Buckingham Palace." Agatha leaned forward. "Did Petra threaten you?" Guy hesitated. "She said if I didn't sign, she'd publicly question my hygiene standards. That could ruin us. People listen to these fancy entrepreneurs." Agatha tapped her nails. "So you had motive?" "Everyone had motive," Guy said quietly. "She made enemies everywhere." A fair clue, Agatha thought. Petra had threatened more than one livelihood. Charles steered the conversation. "Where were you during the tasting?" Guy frowned. "Sorting stock in the back. I only came out when I heard shouting." "Anyone with you?" "My supplier on the phone," Guy said. "Ask him. And no, I didn't tamper with the cake." Agatha studied him. Nervous, defensive, yes, but frightened too. He didn't feel like a killer, at least not a competent one. They left Guy fussing with cutlery, and Agatha marched toward Doris Simpson's cottage. Doris opened the door with red eyes and flour on her cheek. "Oh, Mrs. Raisin," she whimpered, "I've been sick with worry." Agatha softened by half a degree. "Doris, we're only here to ask questions." Doris dabbed her eyes. "Petra was helping me with my baking, only she wasn't really helping. She said my icing looked like a toddler's scribble, and my sponge was—" Doris gulped. "Rural." Charles grimaced. "Good heavens." Doris wrung her hands. "I told her once that I wished she'd choke on her own icing. I didn't mean it, Mrs. Raisin." Agatha felt a sting of sympathy. "Doris, everyone wishes that about someone at least twice a week. It doesn't make you a murderer." Doris burst into tears anyway. Agatha patted her awkwardly while Charles offered a linen handkerchief he would regret losing. "Did you see anyone near Petra's table?" Agatha asked. Doris sniffed. "Trevor Jessup was lurking. He said her kitchen was a menace to society, and he smirked when she collapsed. Horrid man." A credible red herring, Agatha thought. Trevor did enjoy Petra's downfall a little too much. "And Belinda?" Agatha pressed. Doris's voice trembled. She was frightened of Petra, terrified she'd steal her mother's recipes. She kept asking Petra for her notebook back. Petra said she'd lost track of it. Agatha felt her spine prickle. A missing recipe book. Another motive entirely. They left Doris with tea and tissues, and Charles stretched his arms as they walked. "You handle emotional women quite well." "I do not," Agatha said. "I dislike emotional people, especially when they're me." Charles chuckled. "Shall we visit Belinda next?" "WI committee first," Agatha said grimly. "I need to deal with Trevor before he paints me as a biohazard." At the WI hall, a handful of members were setting up chairs for a committee meeting. Trevor Jessup stood at the front, preparing notes as if delivering a lecture at Oxford. He brightened when Agatha entered. "Mrs. Raisin, here to learn proper hygiene standards." "I maintain perfectly good hygiene," Agatha said, "and I don't need to wear gloves to chop carrots." Trevor sniffed. "Petra Danby was a menace, I warned everyone. Her shortcuts were dangerous. I knew something dreadful would happen." "You sound delighted about it," Agatha said. Trevor bristled. "I am simply vindicated." "Vindicated people rarely look smug," Charles murmured. Trevor launched into a tirade about unsafe cooling racks, questionable cream storage and industrial mixers. The WI members listened politely, some dozing off. Trevor's enjoyment of Petra's death was distastefully obvious, and yet Agatha sensed he lacked malice. Pettiness, yes. Murder? Hardly. He was the sort who would write strongly worded letters, not commit crimes. "Did Petra threaten you?" Agatha asked. Trevor puffed up. "She said she'd lodge a complaint about my inspections, said I was obstructive. Imagine! Me!" Agatha imagined it very easily. Trevor jabbed a finger toward her. "If the police need a suspect, they should start with her. You were practically breathing over that cake." Agatha glared. "And you were practically licking your lips when she died. Doesn't make either of us guilty." Trevor floundered. I resent that." "Resent away," Agatha said, turning on her heel. Outside, Charles grinned. "Well done. He nearly fainted." "He deserved worse," Agatha muttered. "Now let's find Belinda." Belinda Tapp lived in a neat, ivy-draped cottage with curtains that always seemed drawn too tightly. She answered the door with hesitant politeness. "I won't be long," Agatha promised. "Just a few questions." Belinda ushered them into the sitting room, clutching a mug of untouched tea. "I didn't kill her," she blurted. "No one said you did," Agatha said, though half the WI clearly had. Belinda looked miserable. Petra borrowed Mum's recipe book again. She said she'd modernized some entries, but she never gave it back. I asked twice. She said she misplaced it. Agatha's suspicion grew. "When did you last see it?" "A week ago," Belinda whispered. "I think she copied something. She had this idea she could improve everything, even things that weren't hers." Charles inspected a shelf of framed family photos. "Your mother was a good baker." "The best," Belinda said, voice thick. "She wrote everything down, every variation, every mistake, every success." "And Petra knew that," Agatha said. "She wanted your mother's work." Belinda nodded. "I wanted to confront her at the fair, but I didn't dare." Agatha gazed at the shaken woman. Belinda didn't fit the picture of a murderer, but fear could twist people. "Thank you, Belinda," Agatha said softly. "We'll find out what happened." Belinda's eyes welled. "Please just get my book back." Outside, Charles stretched again. Poor girl, timid as a rabbit. "Timid rabbits can bite," Agatha muttered, "but I don't think she poisoned anyone." "And the missing recipe book?" Charles asked. "A clue," Agatha said. "A big one." They wandered back toward Carsley. Charles walked with deliberate ease. Agatha marched like a woman ready to interrogate shrubs if necessary. "Lunch?" Charles asked hopefully. "Later," Agatha said. "My brain is working." "That's why you need lunch," Charles said. "Fuel." Agatha swatted him lightly with her handbag. As they reached the cottage, Roy Silver stood on her doorstep, knocking with urgency and flair. "Darlings!" Roy cried, spotting them. "Have you heard?" "Heard what?" Agatha demanded. "Petra's London past is exploding. Stolen recipes, betrayed partners, lawsuits threatened. She left a trail of enemies from Soho to Southwark." Agatha felt excitement spark. "Names?" "Several," Roy said smugly, "and some of them might have followed her here." Charles whistled. "Well, well," Agatha smiled slowly. Vanity, theft, jealousy, ambition. Petra had stirred all of it like batter. Now someone had stirred back. She unlocked her door. "Come inside, both of you. We've work to do." Hodge stood on the armchair, stretching luxuriously as they entered. He eyed them with mild disdain, then curled into his favourite spot as though murder investigations were simply background noise to his day. Agatha exhaled, a small ember of satisfaction glowing beneath the anxiety. "Right then," she said. "Let's find a killer." Hodge flicked his tail, unimpressed but perfectly present, as the kettle clicked on with a homely sigh. "Agatha, darling, you look like a woman preparing to invade Poland," Roy Silver announced as she strode toward Moreton in Marsh Station. Agatha ignored the dramatics, clutching her handbag with grim purpose. Roy had insisted on serious investigative journalism in London, which Agatha translated as gossip with a transport budget. "Just keep up," she snapped. "We've wasted enough time." Roy flitted beside her like a brightly coloured bird. "I'm simply thrilled you agreed to this. Think of the glamour." "I'm thinking of the murderer," Agatha said. "Glamour can wait." On the train, Roy produced a stack of magazines. "Petra's publicity trail," he explained. A tragic carnival of self-congratulation. Agatha skimmed headlines. Her smile looks fake. Her smile was her weapon, Roy replied, much like your sarcasm. Agatha sniffed. Sarcasm is a tool. She weaponized icing. Same thing, different texture, Roy said. London hit Agatha like a noisy perfume. Cars honked, people rushed, and every pavement seemed designed to trip her. Roy guided her to a petite PR office squeezed between a hair salon and a vegan bakery. Inside, Claire Hennessy, Petra's former business partner, looked up from a cluttered desk. She was sharp-featured, tired-eyed, and clearly delighted by Petra's downfall. "You're here about Petra," Claire said. "Of course you are. Everyone is." Agatha sat. "We're trying to understand her history." Claire laughed dryly. History? More like a trail of stolen ideas and bruised egos. Roy leaned forward. "Stolen?" "Oh yes," Claire said. Petra specialized in appropriation. Recipes, concepts, slogans. She'd take a junior baker's creation, tweak it, then parade it as her masterpiece. Agatha felt a chill of recognition. Did she ever steal from people outside London? Claire nodded. Small-town bakers, women who never thought to fight back. Petra preyed on them. Less paperwork. "Belinda," Agatha murmured. "And her mother's recipes." Claire snapped her fingers. "That sounds exactly like Petra. She always said rural bakers had unpolished gems she could improve." Agatha bristled. "Improve? The nerve!" Roy, flipping through a file, chimed in. "Did anyone ever confront her?" "Plenty," Claire said. "But Petra had charm and lawyers. Once people realized how exhausting it was to fight her, they gave up." Agatha's irritation softened into something colder. "Did you ever consider she might hide something darker?" Claire shrugged. "Poison? Hardly. Petra preferred public humiliation, icing messages, snide slogans, humor with teeth." Agatha recalled the cruel messages piped across cakes. She enjoyed it. "Oh yes," Claire said. Humiliation was art to her. They left the PR office with more questions than answers, but Agatha felt closer to understanding Petra's enemies, a crowd as large as the London Underground map. Roy next led her into a cramped cafe in Soho, where an ex-employee named Paige waited. Paige wore a black apron and an expression of long-suffering enlightenment. "She ruined my career," Paige said without introduction. "So, what do you want to know?" Agatha cut straight to business. "Did she steal your work?" "She stole everybody's work," Paige said. "Even slogans, those cheeky icing insults. She lifted half of them from a comedy writer she briefly dated." Agatha made a noise of disgust. "So she didn't even come up with her rudeness." "Oh, she refined it," Paige said. "She liked things sharp, especially barbs. She used them to keep people in line." Roy fluttered his eyelashes. "Did anyone ever want revenge?" Paige snorted. "Half the London baking scene. But we're not murderers. We fantasized, sure, pushing her face first into a custard tart, drowning her in piping bags. Nothing serious." Agatha leaned forward. "Could someone have followed her to the Cotswolds?" Paige considered. "Possibly. She didn't leave London on good terms, but Petra was careful where she settled next. Fresh victims, easier control." Agatha clenched her fist. "She targeted Belinda deliberately." Paige shrugged. "Wouldn't surprise me. She liked timid women. Easier to exploit." Roy reached into his bag and produced a magazine. "Speaking of exploitation, look at this." He flipped it open to a full-page feature from years ago. Petra stood proudly beside a towering cake, delicate piping curling around its edges. Agatha grabbed the magazine. This is Belinda's design." Roy nodded. "Almost identical. Scrollwork, border style, even the draped icing." Agatha felt indignation flare. She stole Belinda's work, completely. Paige sighed. Classic Petra, and she probably mocked the poor woman afterward. Agatha's pulse quickened. Petra's murder looked less like a random act and more like the climax of years of theft and spite. "We should go," Roy said. "Bill will want to know this." "Bill will want to arrest me for digging," Agatha muttered. "Darling, he wants to arrest you for breathing dramatically," Roy replied. They reached Mercester by early evening. Agatha convinced herself she wasn't nervous about speaking to Bill. She was simply determined to appear innocent. Bill met them in his office, dark circles under his eyes. "Agatha, Roy, what trouble have you brought now?" "Information," Agatha said proudly. "Useful information." Roy perched on a chair. "Petra stole designs from Belinda years ago. We have proof." Bill rubbed his forehead. "That's interesting, but not conclusive." Agatha leaned in. "It's motive." "Motive is half of Carsley," Bill replied. "Petra upset everyone." Roy added, "She also upset several Londoners who may or may not know where she moved." Bill swallowed a sigh. Wonderful. A murder with a suspect pool the size of Gloucestershire. Agatha crossed her arms. "You need to know something else. Petra used icing messages as weapons." Bill snorted. "I've seen worse weapons." "They were targeted," Agatha insisted, "designed to humiliate specific people." "That fits with the psychological profile," Bill said, "but it doesn't tell me who poisoned her." Roy wiggled his eyebrows. "Is the poison confirmed?" Bill glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Yes, found in the icing, not the sponge." Agatha inhaled sharply. "So it was added last minute." "Exactly," Bill said. "Which means someone with access during the fair. Petra herself piped the final message, but she wasn't watching everything." Agatha mentally replayed the scene. People clustered around, helpers assisting, tension everywhere. "Who was closest?" she asked. Bill hesitated. "Guy was nearby at one point. Trevor wandered around a lot. Belinda approached the table once. Doris hovered. And you?" Agatha threw up her hands. "I barely touched anything." Bill watched her evenly. Someone had opportunity and nerve. Agatha's indignation faded into thought. "Belinda's notebook is missing," she said. "Petra likely stole it. That's motive." "And Trevor loathed Petra's hygiene standards," Roy reminded them. "He probably dreams in clipboards." "And Guy feared the contract fallout," Agatha added. "Financial ruin breeds desperation." "Exactly," Bill said. "Which is why you must not interfere." "I'll be subtle," Agatha said. "No, you won't," Bill replied. Roy grinned. "Darling, subtlety isn't in your ingredients list." Agatha huffed. "I will be subtle by my standards." "That terrifies me," Bill said. Charles arrived then, as if summoned by exasperation. He strolled in wearing his usual languid charm. "Evening all. I hope no one is arrested yet." "Not yet," Bill muttered. Charles settled beside Agatha. "I hear London was enlightening." "Petra stole everything," Agatha said. "Belinda's designs, other bakers' work, slogans, everything." Charles nodded. "Vanity and theft, two excellent motives." Agatha rubbed her temples. "Petra disrupted so many lives. It's a wonder she wasn't murdered sooner." Bill gave her a warning look. "Agatha." "I'm not celebrating," she snapped. "I'm reflecting." Roy fluttered his eyelashes. "If we brand the case the Improper icing affair, we'll double newspaper interest." Agatha turned on him. "Roy, if you try to monetize my involvement, I'll push you into a vat of royal icing." Roy beamed. "See? Drama. Headlines beg for you." Agatha sighed, her irritation softened by faint, guilty pleasure. "I'd rather find the killer than star in your press releases." "Both are possible," Roy said cheerfully. Charles chuckled. "You enjoy all this more than you admit." Agatha refused to answer. She had enjoyed parts of it, the investigation, not the suspicion, and certainly not the humiliation. She stood. "We're leaving." Outside the station, the sky had dimmed. Agatha inhaled deeply, mind spinning with suspects' motives and the bitter taste of stolen recipes. When she reached home, Hodge stretched on the armchair as if welcoming her to the only place where drama didn't matter. His slow blink grounded her. Agatha dropped her handbag, leaned against the door, and let the quiet of her cottage wrap around her. "Right," she whispered. "Tomorrow we dig deeper." Hodge yawned, unimpressed, and curled into contented sleep. The kettle clicked on, offering its gentle evening sigh, a small reminder that, mystery or no, life in Carsley still brewed comfort. 2 days later, "Hodge, stop that this instant!" Agatha hissed as the basket on her arm wobbled. A paw emerged, determined to claw its way toward freedom. "You are here for emotional support, not to terrorize baked goods." The basket gave a resentful bounce. Agatha marched on, ignoring the curious glances from villagers gathering in the vicarage garden. A long white marquee stretched across the lawn, flapping mildly as a light drizzle pattered on the canvas. Agatha scowled at the moisture. "Of all days for frizz," she muttered. Mrs. Blocksby greeted her with gentle warmth. "Agatha, thank you for coming. We're hoping today brings some comfort after recent events." "Comfort," Agatha said. "This village doesn't do comfort. It does gossip with cake." Mrs. Blocksby's eyes twinkled. "Even so, a charity tea must go on." Inside, the air smelled of sugar and strained optimism. Tables were lined with scones, sponge cakes, iced buns, and the nervous smiles of WI members pretending everything was fine. Agatha surveyed the room with the sharp focus of a politician courting votes. Belinda Tapp hovered near a display of Victoria sponges, her hands twisting anxiously. Guy Latimer arranged cups with the jumpiness of a man awaiting financial ruin. Trevor Jessup stalked about with a clipboard, as though the marquee was an industrial kitchen he had grudgingly agreed to tolerate. Agatha approached Trevor. "There you are, the nation's most enthusiastic killjoy." Trevor sniffed. "Someone must uphold standards. Hygiene is no laughing matter." "I wasn't laughing," Agatha said. "I was pitying." He bristled and stormed off to lecture a table of pensioners about safe storage temperatures for clotted cream. Agatha moved on, working the crowd with forced charm. "Lovely sponge, Mrs. Cartwright. Slightly dry, but very brave." She drifted from group to group, pretending to engage in small talk while secretly watching who lingered near the cakes. The drizzle outside grew steadier, tapping on the marquee like impatient fingernails. Agatha scowled upward. "Of all weather, why drizzle? It ruins hair and moods." Mrs. Blocksby appeared at her side. "Do relax, Agatha. It's only a bit of damp." "It's sabotage," Agatha said. "Atmospheric sabotage." Mrs. Blocksby patted her arm kindly before slipping away to charm a group of nervous newcomers. Agatha glanced at the basket. It bulged ominously. "Stay put," she warned. Hodge's answering grunt suggested rebellion. Guy Latimer drifted over, running a hand down his face. "This whole event feels cursed." "Only because Petra left such a mess," Agatha said. "Someone here knows more than they admit." Guy swallowed. "Do you think the police suspect us all?" "Yes," Agatha said honestly. "And so do I." He paled and excused himself quickly. At the far end of the marquee, Belinda stood alone, shoulders tight. Agatha approached, gentler than usual. "Belinda, you all right?" Belinda nodded weakly. "I don't think we should have done this today." "Neither do I," Agatha said. "But if we stop living because a bully died, we might as well hand the village to the gossips." Belinda managed a thin smile before slipping away to refill the sugar bowls. Agatha's instincts prickled. Underneath the village cheerfulness flowed an undercurrent of anxiety. Too many people watching each other, too many pretending not to notice. She turned toward the nearest table and froze. Gasps rippled through the marquee. A lemon drizzle cake, once pristine, had been defaced. Across the top, in bright pink icing, was scrawled a crude insinuation involving a local couple, a wheelbarrow, and apparently very little clothing. Agatha's jaw dropped. "Oh, for heaven's sake!" Mrs. Blocksby hurried over, hands clasped in panic. "Oh dear! Oh my goodness! Cover it with a napkin!" Trevor Jessup swooped in triumphantly. "You see? This is why unregulated home baking is a menace." "Oh, shut up, Trevor," Agatha snapped. "No one here is writing pornographic icing for fun." Guy Latimer looked horrified. "People will think my pub was involved. Someone will blame me somehow." Belinda arrived moments later, and her face flooded with distress. "I didn't do this. I swear I would never, never write something so awful." "No one thinks you did," Agatha lied. "Several WI women absolutely did think so." Agatha leaned closer to the cake. The lettering was unnervingly neat, each curve precise. Her breath caught. "This style, these curls on the letters, I've seen this before." Mrs. Blocksby whispered, "Petra's cake?" "Exactly," Agatha murmured. "Someone is copying her, either to taunt or to confuse us." A fresh wave of murmurs washed through the tent. Agatha felt every pair of eyes prickling against her back. Charles, arriving late and rain-spattered, slipped up beside her. "What have I missed, aside from slander in icing form?" "Sabotage," Agatha said. "A deliberate one." Charles inspected the cake. "Impressive workmanship. Shame about the message." Agatha elbowed him sharply. Trevor stepped forward again, puffed with importance. This is what happens when amateurs attempt professional displays. Chaos, vulgarity, poisoners in disguise. Agatha rounded on him. Trevor, if condescension were lethal, you'd be standing in a courtroom right now. He sputtered. I'm simply pointing out the dangers. Point your warnings somewhere else, Agatha said, preferably into a hedge. A ripple of laughter softened the tension slightly, but only slightly. The vandalized cake sat on its plate like an accusation. Agatha scanned the nearby tables. Napkins disturbed, a stool slightly moved, a smudge of icing on a serving cloth. And there, on the ground near a rubbish bin, a discarded piping nozzle with a smear of bright pink icing. Her pulse quickened. Someone had piped that message from a portable icing kit. Someone with skill. Someone who wanted to mimic Petra's signature style. Agatha crouched, picking up the nozzle with a tissue. A clue, she murmured. Charles leaned over her shoulder. Or a red herring. Agatha glared at him. Must you? Always, he smiled. Before she could respond, a violent shudder rocked the basket beside her. Oh no! Hodge! The lid flew open. A striped face shot out like a furry cannonball. Hodge landed on a table of trifles, skidding perilously close to disaster. Agatha lunged and scooped him up before he buried his head in whipped cream. Hodge, you menace, she muttered, heart hammering. Several WI members tutted with gentle scandal. One whispered, cats at a tea, whatever next. Agatha straightened, cradling Hodge protectively. He is a support animal, she announced. I am emotionally fragile. Charles snorted. Mrs. Bloxby covered a laugh. Belinda approached again, trembling. Mrs. Raisin, does this mean someone is trying to scare us? Agatha softened a fraction. It means the killer isn't done playing games. Trevor overheard and paled. Killer? Here? Today? Oh, do calm down, Agatha said. They're unlikely to poison the jam. The vicar's wife bustled over, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Agatha, dear, I hardly think now is the time to discuss murder in front of the lemon posset. Then you shouldn't have scheduled a tea while one of your parishioners is barely cold, Agatha snapped, then instantly regretted it. Sorry. Tension. Mrs. Bloxby intervened gently. Perhaps we should all take a breath. Agatha attempted to breathe. Instead, she scanned the room again. Belinda shaken, Guy defensive, Trevor furious, half the WI whispering, Charles amused, and somewhere in this gaggle of village politics stood a murderer refining their next move. She pulled Charles aside. The nozzle. It matters. It's icing, Charles said. Everything today is icing. No, Agatha said. This is deliberate mimicry. Someone wants us thinking Petra's style lives on. Or someone wants to frame someone who copied her, Charles pointed out. Agatha hated when he was reasonable. Either way, someone brought a set of nozzles here today, and that set might match the icing at the fair. Charles considered. And finding the owner narrows your suspect list. Exactly, Agatha said. A sudden laughter burst from Roy Silver, who had just arrived carrying a plate of eclair. Darlings, did I miss a scandal? The cake is obscene, Charles said. And not in the fun way, Agatha added. Roy peered at the message. My word, the village is filthier than Soho. Someone wrote it deliberately, Agatha said. Copying Petra. Roy tapped his chin. So the killer is either taunting you or redirecting suspicion. Both, Agatha said grimly, and I'm not playing their game. She pocketed the tissue-wrapped nozzle. Her mind whirred through suspects, motives, opportunity. Someone here knew Petra's style intimately. Someone with skill and resentment. Someone bold enough to strike twice. The drizzle intensified its delicate tapping on the marquee roof. Agatha glared upward. I knew this day was cursed. She gathered Hodge closer, ignoring his offended huff. Cakes, sabotage, murder. Carsley was becoming a frosted battlefield. But she had a clue now. A nozzle smeared with icing, a signature style reproduced, and a murderer with a sweet tooth for theatrics. She would find them. Hodge wriggled into a comfortable sprawl against her arm, and she allowed herself one steadying breath as Mrs. Bloxby approached to calm the crowd. The kettle would hiss comfortingly later at home, she thought. For now, the hunt continued. For the last time, Charles, we are not breaking and entering, Agatha declared, marching down the frosty lane. We are investigating. Charles followed reluctantly, breath steaming. Investigating usually doesn't involve trespassing at night. Agatha lifted her torch like a weapon. Petra's rented cottage just outside Evesham holds answers. Answers don't wait for permission. Neither do burglars, Charles muttered, and I wore suede shoes. Suede, Agatha. Oh, do grow up, she snapped, though the glitter of frost on the hedge did make her feel faintly adventurous. You're lucky I let you come. Lucky, Charles said. You threatened to tell the entire WI that I use hair conditioner. Agatha ignored this slander. The lane shimmered silver under the sharp evening frost, each step crunching softly. Their breaths puffed out in identical clouds, making them look like argumentative dragons. Bill's lot have already searched it once, Agatha muttered. They left it locked, but the outer tape peeled in the damp, so the neighbour started sniffing about. Charles frowned. So, it's not being watched? Not tonight, Agatha said, which means if answers are sitting in there, they won't wait politely. She pushed the door open with the self-satisfaction of a woman who believed laws were guidelines. Inside, the kitchen gleamed with eerie tidiness. It looked unnaturally staged, as though Petra had prepared for a magazine shoot even in death. Charles shut the door softly. She kept things spotless. Suspiciously spotless, Agatha said, sweeping her torchlight across the room. Counters were lined with mixing bowls, whisks and trays. A row of icing equipment lay displayed like surgical tools. But something was wrong. Agatha stepped closer to a box of neatly arranged piping nozzles. Each slot bore a small strip of masking tape with a handwritten label. Round, ribbon, ruffle, leaf, petal. One gap stood empty. A perfect, intentional gap. Agatha felt a victorious shiver. Charles, look. He peered over her shoulder. One missing? Yes, she grinned. And someone used a nozzle at the WIT sabotage. Coincidence? I think not. Next to the gap lay a curled scrap of masking tape, its label half torn. Agatha slipped it into her pocket. Evidence. Charles raised a brow. Isn't this technically stealing? It's borrowing, Agatha whispered, with forensic flair. They opened drawers methodically. One held immaculate cutlery, another held tea towels folded with military precision. Then, aha! Agatha exclaimed softly. In the third drawer lay Belinda's missing recipe notebook, its edges dog-eared and its cover smudged with flour. Agatha lifted it reverently. Poor girl. Petra was planning to steal the lot. Inside, loose papers fluttered out. A business card from Petra's catering company was tucked neatly behind the cover. And beneath that, a draft contract, Charles said, leaning over. Offering Belinda, good grief, this percentage is insulting. Agatha scanned the lines, fury rising. She wanted Belinda to collaborate while stealing her mother's recipes wholesale. Look at the phrasing, modern reinterpretation of inherited concepts. What rubbish. Charles nodded. Petra's greed shines beautifully. Agatha tucked the notebook and contract into her coat. We're returning this to its rightful owner. In daylight, I assume, Charles suggested hopefully. Agatha pretended not to hear. Next, she sifted through a folder of correspondence on the counter. Bills, supplier notes, a draft menu for the cake fair, and one handwritten page that made her freeze. Charles, read this. He lifted the paper, frowning. Meeting to finalize our arrangement. Come alone. B. Signed only B, Agatha said. Belinda. Possibly Bill, Charles said, or even Bloxby. Agatha fixed him with a glare. In what universe is Mrs. Bloxby conducting shady nocturnal business with Petra? She's more cunning than she looks, Charles said lightly. Not now, Charles. Agatha tapped the note. Belinda told us Petra brushed her off every time she asked for the notebook back. What if this note refers to that? What if Petra called her here to finalize the theft? Charles folded his arms. Or Belinda sought confrontation. Agatha fell silent. The thought sat uneasily. Shy Belinda, timid Belinda, yet Petra had pushed many quiet souls too far. Let's search the sitting room, Agatha said finally. They crept through the dim, faintly perfumed cottage. The sitting room was equally pristine, cushions plumped, magazines arranged, an aura of artificial comfort. Agatha opened a side-table drawer, more business cards, receipts, a diary with pages full of appointments. Nothing criminal. Just the mundane schedule of a woman who liked control. A floorboard creaked loudly behind them. Agatha froze. Charles froze. Hodge, had he been present, would have frozen stylishly. They slowly turned toward the window. Outside, peering through the hedge, was the unmistakable silhouette of Mrs. Danforth, Petra's neighbour, a woman known for suspicious eyebrows and Olympic-level nosiness. "Blast," Agatha whispered. "If she sees us—" The shadow moved. "Quick!" Agatha hissed. Charles hissed back. "Where? We can't dive under the sofa." Agatha dragged him toward the back door. They slipped out just as footsteps approached the front path. Outside was colder, the frost brighter. They darted behind 2 dustbins, crouching terribly. Charles muttered, "My aristocratic reputation is dissolving." "No one ever suspected you were respectable," Agatha muttered. The front door creaked open. Mrs. Danforth's voice floated out. "Is someone there? I heard noises." Charles glared at Agatha. "This is ridiculous." "Hush," she breathed. Mrs. Danforth stepped outside, peering into darkness with the suspicion of a woman who believed every rustle signalled scandal. Agatha held her breath. Charles shivered dramatically. After a tense eternity, Mrs. Danforth retreated indoors. Agatha sagged with relief. "Come on." They slipped away along the frosty lane, the cottage glowing faintly behind them. Charles exhaled deeply. "I deserve a medal." "You deserve tea," Agatha said, "and a biscuit, a small one." He smirked. "You were brilliant, you know." "I was adequate," she said modestly, warming slightly. They reached Agatha's cottage, and she set the notebook on the table carefully. The weight of it felt symbolic. Truth, motive, and betrayal bound together. Charles poured them both tea. "So what now?" Agatha stared at the notebook. "Now I confront Belinda. Gently, I hope." "Firmly," Agatha corrected. "She might be innocent, or she might be the person Petra tried to manipulate one step too far." Charles watched her, expression softening. "Are you sure you want this answer?" Agatha rubbed her temples. "I want the truth, even if it isn't neat." Hodge padded into the room, stretching luxuriously before hopping onto Agatha's lap as if sensing her inner turmoil. She stroked him absently, listening to his quiet purr. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "Belinda will tell me everything." Hodge yawned. The kettle sighed, and the night settled around them like a curtain, holding its secrets close. "Right," Agatha declared, marching into the W.I. Hall as though it were Parliament. "Today we get answers." Charles murmured behind her, "Or a riot," but Agatha was already sweeping forward. The hall buzzed with its usual mixture of gossip, teacups, and territorial seating arrangements. Cakes lined the back table, faintly ridiculous for a village recovering from murder, yet no one had dared cancel refreshments. The air smelled of lemon sponge and simmering tension. Mrs. Blocksby greeted Agatha with gentle concern. "I do hope you'll keep things calm today." "I'm always calm," Agatha said. Mrs. Blocksby blinked kindly, choosing not to challenge this fantasy. Bill Wong stood near the doorway, arms folded, gaze fixed on Agatha like a zookeeper watching an animal known for dramatic escapes. "Agatha," he said warningly, "you promised not to cause trouble." "I promised nothing of the sort," she replied, "but I'm here to help. That's what worries me." The committee meeting began in typical WI fashion. Confusion about minutes, a quarrel about whether lemon drizzle should be classified as cake or pudding, and Doris Simpson losing her pen 3 separate times. Agatha tapped her foot impatiently. Charles lounged beside her with aristocratic boredom. Finally, when a lull opened, Agatha sprang to her feet. "I have something to say." Bill muttered, "Oh no." The hall quieted with the kind of eager dread found only in small villages and pantomime audiences. Agatha sprang to her feet. "Before anyone starts pointing fingers, Guy Latimer's alibi checks out. Bill's confirmed it." The hall gasped. Mrs. Cartwright dropped a biscuit. Doris squeaked. Guy stood paralysed, clutching a tray of cups. Bill pinched the bridge of his nose. "Agatha." "No," she pressed on. Guy was financially desperate. Petra pressured him about contracts. Some people claim he was near the cake stand at the fair. Guy found his voice. "I was not." "They said you hovered," Agatha insisted, suspiciously. "I was delivering crates," Guy spluttered, "and I can prove it." He rummaged in his pocket and produced folded papers with shaking hands. "My delivery schedule. I was in the back storage during the entire judging, see the times, and I had a phone call with the brewery at the same moment she collapsed. Bill has the timestamp. Bill nodded reluctantly. He's right. His alibi checks out. A wave of murmurs rolled through the hall, some disappointed at the lost drama, others relieved they hadn't bought a pint from a murderer. Agatha crossed her arms. He still looks guilty. Agatha, Bill said sharply, you just publicly humiliated an innocent man. Guy's face flushed with fury. I run an honest pub, Mrs. Raisin. I would never poison anyone. Agatha muttered. Not deliberately, perhaps. Agatha, Bill barked, but the moment was already spiralling into delighted WI gossip. Mrs. Timpson whispered loudly, I always thought Guy too handsome to trust. Her friend replied, I thought he used too much gel, always a sign of moral decay. Charles leaned toward Agatha. Wonderful spectacle. Entirely unhelpful, but wonderfully theatrical. Oh, do shut up, she whispered. Before the mood could steady, another disturbance erupted. Hodge, who had been smuggled in a basket again, had escaped. He pranced along the side table, tail held triumphantly aloft, and discovered a slice of abandoned sponge. Without hesitation, he delicately licked the icing. Hodge! Agatha cried, lunging as half the WI gasped. But Hodge was unbothered, positively smug, continuing his tasting with serene pleasure. Mrs. Bloxby sighed. He does seem quite satisfied. As Agatha retrieved him, she froze mid-movement. A revelation clicked into place. The icing, she whispered. What about it? Charles murmured. He's absolutely fine. No distress, no reaction. Which means the leftover icing, not the icing remaining on the cakes here, can't contain lingering poison. Whatever killed Petra must have been extremely concentrated, used only once and not spread across everything. Bill stiffened. You're saying the poison wasn't in a batch. It was applied with something separate. A single-use piping bag, Agatha said triumphantly, and a specific nozzle, the missing nozzle. Bill exhaled heavily. You realize you are currently doing my job in front of 30 witnesses. You're welcome, Agatha replied. A stir at the edge of the hall caught her attention. Belinda Tapp stood pressed against the wall, pale, clutching her reclaimed recipe notebook to her chest. She looked desperately small, almost folded in on herself. Agatha approached her softly. Belinda, I need a word. Belinda shook her head. Not here. I found a note, Agatha whispered, addressed to B, and your mother's recipes in Petra's drawer, and the missing section of her nozzle set. Belinda flinched. Agatha, please, don't. Not here. Agatha frowned. Belinda, did you meet Petra the night before the fair? Did she threaten you again? Belinda glanced around fearfully. Doris was crying into a tea towel. Guy sat hunched, humiliated. Trevor lectured anyone who'd listen. The room churned with agitation. Belinda swallowed. Please, come to my kitchen. I'll explain. I can't speak here. Agatha hesitated. Something tremored in Belinda's voice. Fear, grief, guilt, something else entirely. But the woman didn't look like a killer. She looked like someone pushed far past her limits. All right, Agatha said gently. I'll come. Belinda nodded quickly, relief flooding her features. I'll be home in half an hour. Bill stomped over as Belinda hurried out. Agatha, stop interrogating people mid-meeting. Someone had to, she shot back. No, no one had to, especially not you. Charles drifted up, unhelpfully amused. To be fair, Bill, she restrained herself for almost 20 minutes. A record. I should arrest her for disorderly conduct, Bill muttered. Agatha bristled. Arrest me? Hodge just provided a crucial clue. You should thank me. Bill glared at Hodge, who lifted a paw in regal indifference. Fine, Bill said through gritted teeth, but no more public accusations. Agatha sniffed. Then perhaps the police should try solving something occasionally. Charles put a hand on her arm, guiding her toward the exit before Bill combusted. Come along, my fiery queen of chaos. You have a private meeting to prepare for. Outside, the mild afternoon felt unnervingly ordinary after the storm inside the hall. Agatha tucked Hodge securely into the basket and took a steadying breath. Charles looked at her thoughtfully. You think Belinda's guilty? Agatha shook her head. I don't know, but she's frightened, and guilt and fear look very similar on timid people. And if she did meet Petra that night, Charles said, there's more to her story. Yes, Agatha murmured, and I intend to hear it. They walked back toward Lilac Lane, each step laced with anticipation and unease. Hodge shifted inside the basket, settling with a soft, offended huff. Agatha stroked the lid affectionately. You saved the day, you greedy creature. Charles arched a brow. He saved the icing, certainly. Agatha managed a small smile. All right, that too. Back in her cottage, she set the basket down, watching Hodge stretch luxuriously before curling onto his favourite chair. His calm presence soothed the frayed edges of her thoughts. Belinda had agreed to talk, and talk she would, but whatever waited in that quiet kitchen, confession, fear, or the truth about Petra's final hours, Agatha felt the shift in her bones. The case was narrowing, motives sharpening, clues aligning like stubborn puzzle pieces. And somewhere, within Belinda's trembling silence, lay the next key. Agatha exhaled slowly, her senses prickling. Right, she whispered. Time to find out who B really was. Hodge yawned, unimpressed, and tucked his head beneath his paw as the kettle began its gentle evening murmur. Agatha opened the conversation with characteristic bluntness. Right, Belinda, you asked for privacy, so talk. And don't faint halfway through, I haven't the patience. Her tones snapped across the tiny kitchen like a tea towel flicked against a bare arm. Belinda flinched but didn't fold. She sat opposite Agatha and Charles at her scrubbed pine table, hands tucked beneath her thighs to keep them from trembling. The kitchen smelled warmly of vanilla and old icing sugar lodged forever in drawers, a comforting scent at odds with the tension tightening the air. Even Charles, usually unbothered by any human drama not involving his bank account, sat straighter than usual. You'll have to let her speak, he murmured, nudging Agatha's ankle. Interrogations go poorly when you shout first. I haven't shouted, Agatha hissed. Yet. Belinda inhaled sharply, her voice thin but steady. Petra had been stealing from me for months. Agatha leaned in at once. Stealing what? My work, Belinda whispered. My mother's work, really. Recipes, designs, decoration techniques, all taken from her notebook. She glanced nervously at the recipe book now resting between them, the dog-eared pages splayed like wounded wings. Petra said we could collaborate. She'd modernize everything. She promised publicity, workshops, maybe even a cookbook. Let me guess, Agatha said, eyebrows rising. Promises in exchange for nothing. Belinda managed a strained smile. She offered a partnership contract, but the terms were dreadful. 10% for me, everything else hers. She said my mother's notes lacked charm and commercial edge, and she'd basically be doing me a favour. Agatha snorted. That sounds like Petra. Charm of a stone in your shoe. Charles folded his arm. So you refused to sign? I hesitated, Belinda admitted. I didn't want to fight her. She could be so overwhelming, and I'm not— She gestured helplessly at herself. I've never been good at saying no. Agatha refrained from the obvious commentary and simply nodded, though her expression was sharp. Belinda, encouraged, continued. After I hesitated, Petra turned nasty. She said she'd publish the recipes anyway, claimed she'd improved every design beyond recognition. She laughed at me. Belinda's voice cracked. Then she hinted she could air an old mistake of mine. Agatha pounced. What mistake? Belinda coloured violently. A foolish affair. Years ago. No one knows. She'd heard rumours somehow. She said it would make me look ridiculous, that people in the village never forget things like that. They don't, Charles said mildly, but no one cares either. That's the irony. Agatha ignored him. So, you arranged the meeting? Belinda nodded. Yes, the note marked B in Petra's folder was for me. I wanted to talk her out of it. I wanted my mother's notebook back. I thought if I confronted her in private, she'd see reason. Did she? Agatha asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer. No. She said my mother's recipes were quaint, old-fashioned. Playground stuff next to what she could do. Then she said, if I didn't hand over the rights, she'd tell everyone about my affair and ruin any chance I had at building a proper business. Belinda's eyes brimmed again. She said the notebook was hers now. Agatha's voice softened by a fraction. And you snapped? Belinda nodded once, tiny but definite. I had specialist supplies, things you don't buy at a supermarket. I knew how a small amount in the right medium could make someone violently ill. My plan was to put just a trace into a single piping bag. I thought it would only make her violently sick, but she took a bigger bite than I expected, right down into the icing, and I misjudged it. I swear I didn't mean— Agatha exchanged a glance with Charles. And this piping bag? Belinda swallowed. It was Petra's nozzle, Belinda whispered. Her fine lettering one, the one she used for those neat little messages. She kept them labelled, so I knew exactly which one she favoured, and which gap would be noticed later. She'd labelled everything, so I knew exactly which one she favoured for fine lettering. Petra often asked me to help her finish designs when she wanted something neat. That day at the fair, she invited me to tidy the final swirl on her improper iced message. Charles grimaced. And you swapped the bag. Briefly, Belinda whispered. Just for that one word. I thought she'd eat a taste while showing off. She always did. Agatha sat back, arms folded, mind whirring. And the second sabotage? The vulgar message at the vicarage? Belinda buried her face in her hands. Panic. I thought if improper cakes kept appearing, Petra's death might look like a prank gone wrong, not poisoning. I never meant to hurt anyone else. I thought I could make it messy, confusing. I thought I could hide. Charles let out a low breath. You made it look like someone copying Petra's style. Clever in theory. Disastrous in practice, Agatha added. You underestimated this village. They can smell guilt like foxes smell chicken. Belinda gave a tiny, heartbroken nod. I know. Silence settled heavily across the kitchen. The fridge hummed. A spoon ticked faintly in a mug as it cooled. Outside, wind rattled the window latch, a thin reminder that the world carried on, ignorant of confessions made in warm, vanilla-scented rooms. Agatha studied Belinda with an expression far more complicated than annoyance. There was anger, yes. Agatha always felt angry when people lied, especially when they lied badly. But there was something else beneath it. Recognition, perhaps. She had known what it felt like to be pushed, belittled, made to feel small. Vanity was armor. Humiliation was a wound. You didn't mean to kill her, Agatha said at last. But you did. Belinda flinched as if struck. I know. And you covered it up. Poorly, might I add. That icing flourish was too precise. Petra was flashy, you're tidy. A very different hand. Charles cleared his throat. Agatha, perhaps this is the moment. It is, she said briskly. I'm not the police. I can't decide what happens next. A quiet knock fell on the back door. Firm, familiar. Belinda's shoulders sagged. Bill? Agatha rose. Yes. I asked Charles to call him once you said we could talk. I'm good, Belinda, but I'm not obstructing justice for anyone. Not even a village baker with talent and terrible luck. Belinda stood, trembling but oddly calm. I'll go with him. Charles opened the door. Bill Wong stepped inside, bringing a rush of cold air with him. His expression was solemn but gentle, the look of a man who had seen too many small tragedies dressed as crimes. Belinda, he said softly, may we speak outside? She nodded. I'm ready. Agatha watched her walk into the night, a slight figure swallowed by darkness and duty. The kitchen, moments ago warm and crowded with confession, now seemed hollow, as if a stage set after the final curtain. Charles exhaled slowly. Well, that's that. Agatha bristled. Don't say that's that. I hate that phrase. It's smug. It's accurate. Agatha turned away, glaring at the kettle as though it had betrayed her by boiling too slowly. She didn't deserve to be stolen from. But Petra didn't deserve to die either. Honestly, these village women, give them a piping bag and a grievance and suddenly we're in Macbeth. Charles smiled faintly. You solved it, Aggie. Of course I solved it, she snapped. Someone had to. And I'm not letting Carsley be known as the place where bakers drop dead like overcooked scones. Charles moved toward the door. Shall I make tea? Agatha sighed. Yes, and make it strong. I've had a long day discovering that half the WI is capable of murder. He set about the task, clattering cups in a way that suggested aristocratic men should not be trusted near crockery. Agatha sat again, arms wrapped around herself, not cold but unsettled. The door creaked. A soft thump followed. Hodge, having escaped his basket, padded into the kitchen, tail up, eyes bright. Well, Agatha murmured, at least someone isn't traumatized. Hodge leapt gracefully onto her lap, kneading her jumper with contented paws. Agatha stroked him, voice dropping to something gentle. "You're lucky, you know. No one wants to steal your recipes." Hodge purred louder, unconcerned with crime, confession, or village scandal. The kettle clicked off with a quiet sigh, filling the kitchen with a small, homely peace that settled the air at last, warm, familiar, and wonderfully, defiantly ordinary. "Honestly, Bill, people are already saying Belinda poisoned her with arsenic," Agatha snapped, brandishing a WI newsletter as though it were a weapon. "By next week they'll swear she baked it into a soufflé." Bill Wong stood in Agatha's kitchen, looking as if he'd aged 3 years since Petra Danby's dramatic collapse. "I know," he said tiredly. "I've heard at least 5 versions. One woman claims Petra was stabbed with a sugar thermometer." Agatha snorted. "Typical Castley. Can't tell truth from trifle." Hodge, perched on the counter, inspected Bill with disapproval, as though the policeman had personally disrupted his kingdom. Agatha flicked a crumb off his tail. "And you," she muttered, "are not helping." The murder had slipped into village legend within days. Every hedge, every shop queue, every church pew now held someone murmuring, "Well, you know, she was never quite right, or I heard she blackmailed half of Evesham." The story mutated faster than a gossip columnist on Deadline. Bill sighed. "Belinda has been cooperative. She gave a full statement. She'll face a serious charge, but the CPS will take circumstances into account. Petra's behaviour, well..." He hesitated. "It won't excuse what happened, but it adds context." Agatha stiffened. If Petra hadn't been such a thief, none of this would have happened. And that's the truth. Bill looked at her gently. "It's not the whole truth, Agatha." She turned away. "Don't patronize me." But inside, something shifted. She remembered the look on Belinda's face, that mixture of fear, humiliation, and crushed pride. It lodged uncomfortably near her ribs. There had been moments in Agatha's life when she too had felt the ground tilt under her feet after some public slight. She did not like the comparison. Before she could dwell on it, Charles breezed in without knocking, waving a newspaper. "You're in it again," he announced cheerfully. "Page 5, Village Sleuth Exposes Cake Killer. They make you sound like a scone-wielding Avenger." "I do not wield scones," Agatha growled. "And why are you barging in like a stray ferret?" "Because you left the door on the latch." Charles dropped into a chair. "Also, you owe me dinner from that break-in escapade. I risked frostbite." Agatha rolled her eyes. "Have some tea, and stop being dramatic." "Coming from you," Charles murmured. "That's rich." The kettle clicked off. Hodge stretched, hopped down, and inspected the visitors with the hauteur of a minor monarch reviewing subjects. "Good grief, Agatha," Bill said suddenly, eyeing the counter. "What on earth is that?" "My cake," she said proudly. Charles leaned forward. "You made it? Yourself? Without Doris chained to the oven?" "Yes," Agatha snapped. "Is that so hard to believe?" Both men looked diplomatically alarmed. By early evening, her cottage bustled with a mismatched group. Mrs. Bloxby, warm and unflappable. Doris Simpson knotting her hands. Roy Silver smuggled from London for moral commentary. Charles sprawling like a decorative problem. And Bill still in his work jacket. The small living room was soon fogged with steam, chatter, and competing perfumes. Tea was poured. Something stronger swirled discreetly into Agatha's cup. On the kitchen counter sat her cake, a modest round effort with uneven icing that glistened like honesty made edible. A small decorative flourish attempted sophistication, but landed somewhere near a charming naivete. Mrs. Bloxby smiled with gentle pride. "It looks lovely, Mrs. Raisin." Roy squinted critically. "It's very artisanal, very authentic, very you." Agatha bristled. "Just eat it." Slices were served. Comments showered from every direction. "Oh, that's quite nice." "Very moist." A brave icing choice. "Unmistakably handmade." Agatha glared. "Say one more patronizing word and I'll bake all of you into a pudding." Doris lifted her slice timidly. "It's lovely, Mrs. Raisin, truly." Agatha softened. Doris had suffered enough humiliation through Petra's meddling. "Thank you, Doris. That means something." Roy reached for another slice. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "we could brand this. Agatha Raisin's Deadly Delicious Cakes. Very on trend, very dramatic." A cushion collided with his head. Mrs. Bloxby suppressed a laugh. Perhaps not the best name for WI bake sales. Conversation ebbed and flowed. At intervals the case crept back, wrapped in careful language. No one wanted to speak ill of Belinda. She was, after all, one of them. A quiet woman with gentle manners, not someone imagined capable of a crime of passion. "She just reached breaking point," Mrs. Bloxby said softly. "Petra cornered her." Charles nodded. Vanity and theft are explosive ingredients, worse than bicarbonate. "Still," Roy murmured, "it's tragic. A woman like that pushed until she snapped." Agatha huffed. "Petra pushed everyone. She strutted around as if she invented sugar." Bill cleared his throat. "Let's not rewrite victims or villains. Petra exploited people, yes, but Belinda made choices too." Agatha didn't respond. She stared at her teacup, feeling the faint tug of sympathy and annoyance blending into something uneasy. She had known pettiness, jealousy, and bruised pride. She had also known the intoxicating thrill of attention, the sting of humiliation, the sharp kick of envy. The line between social disaster and personal catastrophe could be thin as spun sugar. Hodge, sensing the room's distraction, seized his opportunity. With silent, practiced grace, he hopped onto a side table and began delicately licking icing from an abandoned plate. Roy shrieked. "He's eating the evidence!" "It's not evidence," Agatha snapped. "It's dessert. Get off there, Hodge." Hodge ignored her, tail flicking with regal entitlement. Mrs. Bloxby smiled. "He seems to approve." "Well, at least someone appreciates my hard labour," Agatha muttered. The evening wound on with familiar rhythms. Roy recounting dramatic London tales, Charles teasing Agatha about her criminal tendencies, Doris apologising to the furniture, Mrs. Bloxby offering calm, precise observations that quietly corrected everyone else, Bill trying to prevent gossip from mutating into actionable scandal. Someone asked, tentatively, about Belinda. Mrs. Bloxby responded first. "I visited her yesterday. She's frightened, of course, but relieved to have told the truth." "She looked like she'd aged 10 years, Bill added quietly. "But she was honest. That will count for something." Doris wiped her eyes. "She was always so kind to me. She helped me with sponge techniques." Agatha said nothing at first. Then, in a rare moment of tenderness she immediately regretted, she murmured, "She was talented. Petra knew it, and that's why she stole from her. These big city types think they own everything they see." "Present company accepted?" Roy asked sweetly. "No," Agatha said, "especially not present company." A ripple of laughter warmed the room. Charles leaned back. "Well then, another castly drama resolved. No doubt there'll be a play about it at the Fete next summer." "Oh, God," Agatha groaned. "Doris, promise me you won't let them cast me as myself again. Last time they made me wear a feather boa and shout dramatically about jam." Doris giggled. "But you were very good." Roy fanned himself theatrically. "You were brilliant. A star. A menace." Agatha smirked despite herself. "I know." The room relaxed into pleasant comfort. Cups refilled, plates cleared. The little cottage, so often a battleground of ego and anxiety, now felt oddly peaceful. Even Hodge, now sprawled luxuriously on the back of the sofa, radiated smug satisfaction. Later, when the door closed behind the last guest, quiet settled around Agatha like a soft shawl. She stood in the kitchen, leaning against the counter. The empty cake plate sat beside the sink, smeared with a faint swirl of icing. Her icing, imperfect, but hers. Hodge padded in and twined around her ankles. "Well," she said, bending to scoop him up, "you certainly enjoyed yourself." Hodge blinked lazily, utterly unrepentant. Agatha carried him to the sofa and sank down with a small sigh. "You know, Hodge, village life is exhausting. One minute I'm humiliated over a cake, the next minute I'm solving murders, and still no one appreciates my brilliance." Hodge kneaded her arm in silent agreement, or perhaps territorial claim. She lit a cigarette, despite promising herself at least 5 times today that she wouldn't. The smoke curled upward, soft in the lamplight. Her thoughts drifted, reluctantly, to Belinda. A quiet woman, dismissed by most, pushed until she saw no way out but mischief and poison. Agatha could imagine, a little too easily, the simmering resentment, the fear of being made a fool, the desperate urge to reclaim something of one's dignity. Castle could be cosy, yes, but coziness bred claustrophobia. One rumour, one slight, one humiliation could ripple outward until someone snapped. Agatha exhaled. "Thin line," she murmured. "Very thin." Hodge stretched luxuriously across her lap, tail brushing the new recipe book on the coffee table. It was glossy, ambitious, and full of treacherous hope. "Absolutely not," Agatha told it. "I'm taking a break from baking." The book remained silently judgmental. She nudged it away with her foot. "Oh, all right, maybe one or two. Something simple, something foolproof." Hodge purred, which Agatha interpreted, wildly optimistically, as encouragement. A soft knock sounded on the window. Charles's face appeared, grinning through the glass. Agatha yelped. "What on earth?" He pushed the window open. "You left your lights on. Thought you might have fallen into the cake mixer." "Get out," she said, throwing a cushion at him. "Go home, and stop spying on me." "Wouldn't dream of it," he said cheerfully, and vanished into the night. Agatha snorted, shook her head, and settled back with Hodge. The kettle clicked softly in the kitchen, cooling, as though the house itself exhaled. Tomorrow, no doubt, the WI would start another scheme: floral arranging, jam judging, perhaps a controversial seminar on gluten. Someone would offend someone else. Someone would gossip. Someone would bake something questionable. And Agatha Raisin would be in the middle of it. Bruised, defiant, secretly delighted. She stroked Hodge's head. "Well, my boy," she murmured, "what shall we stir up next?" The cat blinked slowly, content and unconcerned. Agatha smiled, sharp, tired, pleased, and let the quiet settle around them like icing on a cake that for once had not exploded into chaos.